Today I want to show you what to do if you're making a strip piece block and your fabric strips aren't long enough. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson-Hirst of Chatterbox Quilts, and today we're looking at strip or string pieced blocks and how to solve the problem. What if you have fabric strips you want to use in that block, but they're not long enough? Well, don't worry, it's a really easy fix. So when you're making a strip piece blocks, like this one I have here, you have all these different strips of fabric on it. And by the way, if you don't know how to make a strip piece block, don't worry, I have a video on that. Check the description below for the link. So while all these strips are one fabric and they're long enough to go across that block, sometimes your fabric strips aren't quite long enough. So when you make a strip piece block, or a string piece block, some people may call them, you use a foundation. And I like to use paper foundations, and that's what I've got here. So this is a 6.5 inch foundation to make a 6.5 inch block. And I want to use this fabric in the center, all right? But when I put it down, you can see it's not long enough to cover that center. So what am I going to do? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew more fabric onto it, okay? That sounds pretty simple, doesn't it? All right, so let's talk about some choices here. It does not have to be the same fabric. That's the first thing I want to say to you. In fact, making different or adding different fabric strips together, different fabric pieces, I should say, together to make that strip, makes the block even more interesting. The other thing that makes the block more interesting is if these strips you lay down, like in this particular example, are not the same width. That also gives interest to your block. So let's go back to this little guy here. I want to add an extra piece of fabric on. So maybe I pull out this piece of batik and I want to add that on. I could do that, but it's not the same width. Okay, it's quite a bit bigger. When I cut this off, I'm going to actually lose this fabric. It's probably too thin then to use in any strip piecing, so that's kind of a waste. So what I suggest you do is to look for a strip that's closer. It doesn't have to be the exact width, but close is nice. Okay, so here's one here, for example. This, you can see how much closer this is here. There's just about 1/8 of an inch difference there. Not very much of a difference at all. So that would be a good choice. And the other thing you're looking at, of course, is to make sure that when you sew these together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, that that strip is going to be long enough to cover the block. And obviously this one would be. Now there's something else you might consider. Maybe you have some crumb fabric. Again, if you don't know what crumb fabric is and how to make blocks from that, check the description below because I have several videos on that particular technique. And so you could also add this one to this black strip. Now this is again a little bit bigger, but not very much. So trimming off that little bit of excess, you're not really losing much fabric at all. So what I want to do next is I actually want to sew these together and show you how to trim them up so they're going to work in this block. So join me at the sewing machine, so I'll show you how to do that. So I decided to use that crumb strip to add onto the black piece of fabric here. So we're just going to put them together, sew them together with a 1/4 inch seam. And I'm going to actually flip this over so I can see the black fabric here on top because it's not quite as wide as the other one. But we just want to make sure that we get everything put together properly so I can see what I'm doing here. And I also need my little header here. Here we go. All right, and then we're just going to stitch right along here. Doesn't have to be a perfect 1/4 inch seam. Okay, we'll get a little ender in there as well. If you don't know what those are, why I'm using them, check the description below because I have a video telling you why these are so helpful when you are piecing. All right, so here we go. Doesn't look great yet, but it will in a few minutes. So meet me back at the cutting table, show you what happens next. So now I just want to press that seam before we do any trimming. Just make sure that's pressed nice and flat. All right, and I'm going to press it to the black fabric, I think. Let me see how these other ones, no, you know what, they're pressed away from that, so we'll press it away from the black fabric. Just keep the same pressing order going, that's already happening there. All right, there we go, nice and flat. So this is what it looks like at this stage of the game. Looks a bit strange still. Well, that's because we need to trim it up. So let's do that now. So we're going to keep the width of the black fabric there. It's about an inch and a half, I guess. So we're just going to trim this guy down as well. And they don't have to be perfect. You just want a straight-ish edge on them. So I'm just going to kind of go up here, lay my ruler down on that line there. Everything's sticking to me, which is good. It's supposed to. Stitching a little more than I want it to. Okay, there we go. So now we have this piece, and we want to make sure that it's long enough. It definitely should be, but let's just double check. All right, so there we go. And then when you're doing something like this, and you've got this nice long strip here, much longer than you really need, you can make a few decisions. Do I want to see mostly the black and cut this off here, let's say? Or do we want to see more of the pieced fabrics and less of the black? In which case you can move the black up and cut it off there. So whatever works for you is fine, but that's the next choice you'd need to make. And then of course you continue adding your strips to complete your strip piece block. So if you're panicking because you only have small little strips of fabric and you want to make a strip piece block, no worries, just start adding other pieces onto it until it's long enough and you're good to go. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your quilting friends. And remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video. And before you go, check out these other videos that I have for you on this same technique. Bum, 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 bum.